Welcome to Rekindled Faith with Melanie Bearda. Whether you've been wrestling with questions, facing doubt, or simply just uninspired, let's dive into what it means to be authentic followers of Christ. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Rekindled Faith. I'm excited to introduce to you a friend and mentor of mine. He is also the president and founder of a wonderful ministry called Apologetics Canada. Today, we're going to be discussing the topic of questioning Christianity, both that topic itself, but also a wonderful course that has been created to help people that are wrestling with questions about Christianity. But first, before we dive into that topic, Andy, can you please tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. Hey, Melanie. Good to be with you. And good to be on the podcast. I got a little bit about myself, man. I once was American. I guess I still am American, but I've lived in Canada now longer than I've lived in the U.S., so I think I'm honorary Canadian. Plus I have a Canadian passport, and I'm a Canadian citizen, so I guess I'm Canadian. I have 2 kids, a wife, been married for coming up here on 23 years in September. I pastored for around 20 years, been in ministry for 23 years, and I love everything outdoors, almost everything outdoors. There are ice skating, probably not that, but everything else, I guess. Is there anything you don't like outdoors, Melanie?
No, I do everything. I even do everything in the rain, Andy.
I'm a fair weather hiker, so I tend to stick to nice days. And it's only because I've spent so many trips in a tent in the pouring rain that I'm like, okay, I have that T-shirt. I'm good.
Yeah, you're over it.
I'm
Been there,
over
done that.
Yeah. I don't know. Is that enough? Does that tell your listeners who I am?
That tells the listeners who you are. Yes. I guess you're also a child of God, if we want to go on that route.
Yeah. Let me go on that route for a moment. I didn't grow up in a Christian family. My mom came to faith, and extended, different parts of my family would ultimately come to faith. And I would say that I gave my life to the Lord at the age of 17. I'd say it happened kind of incrementally. So, like most faith journeys, they're messy. It's not a simple, point A to point B kind of journey. It meandered, but it was at 17 when I really gave my life to the Lord and followed after Him, and found myself going on a missions trip shortly after that. And I would say that really set the tone for my life as I wanted to serve God, as a career sort of thing. I kind of hesitate to say that because I don't think about it as a career, but it's a calling. And I guess I'm just saying that because I think we're all called into ministry. I guess just some of us get paid to do it.
Yeah. I love when I get to talk to people that have come to faith later in life, or like that did not grow up in it, because I think that a lot of times people from outside Christianity just assume that a Christian has always been a Christian and that they've just never had any issues, and they're just kind of walking along the path believing in what they would call Sky Daddy and never questioning it. Right? Like, I don't know about you, but like I've encountered a lot of people from outside Christianity that are just like, oh, they've just always been Christian and their life's always been the way that it is and they know nothing. So,
well, and it kind of, I think The Simpsons also kind of shaped some of that people think anybody that's a Christian is like Ned Flanders sort of thing.
Yes.
And intriguingly enough, growing up, I always believed that God existed. So it wasn't, like kind of maybe to get people thinking too, it's not just because you didn't grow up in a Christian family doesn't mean you don't believe in God though either. So I believed God existed. I just didn't, I just didn't know whether or not I just didn't know whether or not God cared that I existed. That was the part that I was confused on. But other than that, when I looked around the world, I'm like, it just makes sense that there's a creator, that clearly there's order in the universe, especially here. and that I'm a part of that order. And I didn't understand what it was all about, though. So for me, really early in high school was a search for meaning in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this even comes into our topic today, which is questioning Christianity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Isn't it? It's kind of funny how your childhood circles back on you later in life. It's so funny how I now look back when I was younger, and I used to ask my mom all sorts of questions. 'Cause I grew up. My dad left my mom when I was about 4. My mom would eventually remarry, but so most of my big conversations with my mom, and I would often ask her, questions of physics, philosophy, metaphysics. And she didn't really know, she didn't have any answers for me. And back then, this might be shocking for some, the internet wasn't even around, and Google wasn't a thing. Like, Google wasn't a thing till I was in college. So how did you go, like, if you ordered the Encyclopedia Britannica or something like that, maybe you could try to sift through some books to try to figure something out. But I remember my mom would often say to me, "Oh man, Andy, I just wish there was somebody that you could ask all your questions to. Just wish there was somebody." So I guess, Melanie, in some ways, that's what questioning Christianity is, and I'm so thankful for it. Is it's an opportunity to ask the questions that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's very important. For myself, anyone that's been listening to this podcast for a while knows that I walked away from faith as a teenager. And I would have said that it was because of the hypocrisy and the condemnation and the judgmentalness of Christians. It was also because I had a lot of questions and I didn't understand. And I didn't believe that I was in a position that God would really care for me or want to be in relationship with me. Or I also just didn't know how to get into a relationship with God. So I struggled and I wasn't able to find the answers to those questions. I was even scared to ask those questions because if I had those questions, there was a vulnerability or like a weakness that I associated to having those questions. So instead of wrestling with it and pursuing Christ in the midst of it, I chose to just put on that rough exterior and like be like, I don't need God, whatever, who cares, and take off. And I chose to walk away from faith and Christianity and God, everything. So
Well, it's interesting because I had a similar moment in my own life when my mom started going to church, bringing me to church, and I still had all my questions, and I wasn't finding answers to those questions. And it's interesting how in that vacuum, all of a sudden you find yourself, facing different things in your life. And for me, it was drugs and alcohol. So early on, I was exposed to alcohol and drugs, and I remember this moment. In By drugs, I mean like marijuana and stuff. But it's always a progression, right? There's always some gateway that leads into more. And I remember distinctly being offered acid, and that was kind of like the drug back then. If you were to, your next step out of marijuana, sort of thing. And it was this moment for me where I thought, you know what, is this really the path that I'm going to continue to pursue to find the answers to these big questions I have about why I'm here and what this is all about? Because I have found nothing down this path thus far. And so it was interesting. It was like a Holy Spirit moment where I said, no, I'm not going to, no thanks. No thanks on the drugs. And that was the start of a turning point in my life, going, I'm going to look for these answers elsewhere. Now, ironically enough, the place that I went to find answers was at high school. I The only person I could figure had things figured, the only person I thought had things figured out in their life was my weightlifting coach teacher. And so I went up to him and asked him, I'm not joking, by the way, we're all working out. I went up to him and asked him, what's the meaning of life? And he told me to get back on the bench and give him another, set of 10. And that it's funny. I wish he knew how significant of a moment that was, because he was the first person that I had ever asked that question. Most of my life, I just assumed life was meaningless. and this was a moment of vulnerability, and left me going, okay, clearly this isn't the place to ask my questions. So for me, it's such an honor to be able to have a ministry at the church I attend, where people can just come and ask whatever questions they have, and that they're welcomed, that they're taken seriously. It doesn't mean that we're going to have an answer for every question, but every question is going to be taken seriously, and we will explore that question together. It just so happens, though, that when you've been asking questions as long as I have, and you've been seeking out answers, that I don't have all the answers, but I got a lot of thoughts on different answers, and can point people to um, various things, from biblical biblical answers, philosophical answers, and scientific answers, to the big questions that I've been asking, and many others are as well.
Yeah, so the Questioning Christianity course that you are the leader of, I guess, that's at your church. And so can you just kind of describe what this course is and how long it goes on for and kind of the topics that are covered within it?
Yeah, and I probably should say, I didn't even bring this up. After I pastored, so I pastored for around 20 years, and then I moved out of pastoring when I did my master's degree at Biola University. I moved into starting a ministry called Apologetics Canada. And I started that back in 2010. So there were a number of years, about 8 years, where I actually did both, running Apologetics Canada and I pastored at the same time. And if apologetics is a new term for anybody listening, it just comes from the Greek apologia. It means to give an answer or a reason. Um, or another way to put it in the Greek would be a defense, to give a defense for yourself. And often it has the connotation of court of law, which, intriguingly enough, in Greece today, they still use the same word and it still has the same meaning. It's to give a defense for yourself. And particularly in the Bible, it's talked about being able to give an answer or reason or defense for the hope that you have in Jesus, and to do that with gentleness and respect. So we've now been going with Apologetics Canada now for 14 years, and that's what we're about. I attend a church here in Abbotsford. I attend Northview, and the pastor of that church, his name is Mark. He's a great guy, and he knows the work that I do across Canada. And it's like, Andy, I got an idea of what we could do at our church, starting this thing called Questioning Christianity. So just got to give props to Mark. It wasn't my idea; it was his idea. But I thought it was a good idea, and an interesting idea. What would happen if you just opened up the doors of your church and said, "Hey, if you have any questions, you can feel free to come and ask those questions," having no idea if anybody would even show up. And I just want to say this kind of right off the get go, because I think this is so important. So often in our culture, whenever we do things like this, it's always about how many people are going to show up, and that, you know, the success of the thing is determined by the amount of people that come. And I would actually say that that is not the case with this. I believe that the success of Questioning Christianity is just hosting the opportunity. If no one came out to QC, I would still think it is a success, because you've been at least given the opportunity to ask whatever questions you have. Any game is, any question is fair game. So you have the opportunity. You can either use it or not use it. As it so happens, we've had a great amount of people that come out every year to QC. So that's been great. And obviously, we will have times where we have more people than other times, and the like. But for me, the fact that it's happening, that's the success. So yeah, it was Mark's idea to put this on. And one of the things that really shocked us was the number of non-Christians over these last couple years that are just bringing themselves to church. It's an interesting idea. Many of them, we meet them constantly. Some are being brought by friends, but many are bringing themselves, which that's another conversation in and of
Yeah.
itself. But then we have the great opportunity to walk alongside them and journey with them in the questions that they have. Did I answer
Yeah.
your question?
Well, you missed a couple, but that's okay. We can circle back to them.
Yeah, let's circle back on those.
Yeah. I just also want to say, like, what a unique program, what a unique course that the doors of the church are opening up for people who have questions about faith. I don't like, I'm just one person in one little spot in this world, but I don't think I've ever come across a program that's similar to this, where it's just like, yeah, whatever question you have, doesn't matter what it is, come bring it to the table. Let's talk about it, without the people that have the question feeling shamed or, like just dumb for having that question.
You know, I agree with you. I've never seen anything quite like it either. And I think the reason for that is there's a lot of fear. What am I going to do if they ask that difficult question? Or what am I going to do if they ask that politically charged question?
Yeah.
But Melanie, you've been a part of this thing for years. And as you know, I think part of the success of it is if you go in there with the intention of loving God and loving people, the question's actually not even the main thing. So it kind of helps you to navigate the lightning rod issues because you're there to care for people and to answer their questions. But I'm not there to have an argument with people. I'm not there to like win an argument with people either. I've already won that argument with myself. Me and the Lord, we're good. I'm there out of obedience in my love for God to love other people and the questions that they have. And I hope that as I wrestle with their questions with them, that I can be a help. That's all I'm doing. What are your thoughts from having seen this and participated in it?
Yeah, yeah. Man, I kind of already alluded to, like, I just think it's such a unique program. And like for myself, I've been a table leader, like you said, for a few years now. And just sitting down with people who are wrestling through different seasons in their faith, or questioning Christianity and wanting to know more and understand more. Like, I've sat down with people that are grieving loved ones and just looking for community and connection. I've sat down with a new believer that's so on fire and like ready to like ignite everybody else's flame, because some of us are getting to be a little bit wah, 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 right? And like they're just like, let's go, Jesus. And like just so excited about it. So there's just such a diversity of people that show up and sit down at those tables, and to be able to sit with them, wrestle with them. And, like you said, like sometimes I don't have the answers. Some questions I've never even considered before, but it helps me to grow in my faith too, to recognize the questions that other people are wrestling with, and to better understand that and equip myself so that I can share the love of Jesus, not just with them, but as I go out into the world. Because chances are, if one person has a question, there's many, many more people that are wrestling with that same question.
Absolutely. And as you've probably noticed doing this for a number of years, the questions tend to be the same. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you see the same questions over and over again. And one of the things that is interesting, a couple things happen in that space. One is then you come with your questions and all of a sudden you realize that you're not alone. Honestly, Melanie, for many, many years, I thought I was alone in asking the question, does life have meaning? I also thought, you know my story well, you've heard me say it many times, but I also thought life was meaningless. I also thought that I had tapped into this mystery of nihilism. Like I didn't know about Freud or Nietzsche. I didn't know about these other philosophers and what was going on. So for me, I thought I was alone. And then all of a sudden you start asking questions and you're dialoguing with people, and before you know it, you realize you're not alone. And there's a lot of people asking questions, and there's some incredible thinkers that have asked that same question and have actually given some really thoughtful responses to it. And then you start to feel a part of a bigger community. This also begins to change things for you as well, because I'm going to guess, Melanie, that when you first started with QC, it was probably a little intimidating sitting down at a table with a bunch of random people asking you questions. And the more you do it, though, the less scary it is. I'm right.
I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah, and the same thing for me. I speak at universities and conferences and academic conferences of all stripes all the time. And for some people, they could look at that on the outside and go, wow, man, he must be so brave to do these different speaking engagements. And I mean, just recently, as you know, I was in Rwanda speaking at the 30th anniversary of the genocide talking about why God allows evil and suffering. And again, people could be looking and go, oh, wow, that'd be so difficult. It's like, well, actually, humans are the same, first of all, and we all ask pretty much the same questions, and we've been asking the same questions for a long time. And after you've been doing this for a while, you kind of start getting used to the questions that people are asking and start to realize that these curveballs that you were afraid of, you've either dealt with those or it's actually just a whole lot simpler than you thought it was. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I agree. Like when you first come up, it can be anything too. It doesn't have to be about apologetics or theology or speaking. But when you come into something new,
Yeah.
it can be daunting. It can be like overwhelming because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. You don't know who's going to be there or what they're going to say or anything. Like that just level of uncertainty can be scary.
Yep.
But then, yeah, like you said, as you continue to show up and continue to like just be faithful to God in the process, you start to recognize and see that things can be quite similar, like with the questions that people have brought forward and the things that they've wrestled with. And that relationship base too, of just being able to sit down with people at Questioning Christianity to hear their side of the story, their side, their perspective, their struggle, even if they've gotten like just come in with a lot of church hurt or confusion, and just to be able to sit there with them and hear them out and allow them to express what has happened in the past, where they're sitting with it, and how to move forward. Like, I don't always have all the answers, but it's just been such an honor and a privilege to sit with people in the midst of all of that and just be the hands and feet of Jesus. And my hope and my prayer is that I am pushing them closer and closer into the arms of Christ. And it's just, yeah, it's just an honest privilege to be able to be a part of such a wonderful course.
Do you know, you were saying some things that I think were really important and maybe could get lost on people, because when you're doing something like this, you could make the assumption that having something called Questioning Christianity is about answering everybody's questions or winning every argument. And some people can be argumentative. It actually doesn't happen that often, and we've never met somebody that was just straight out mean. But in all of my time, by the way, I've never encountered like anything truly YouTube wild. You know what I'm saying? Uh, I'm sure it happens. I just really haven't encountered that. I bring that up just to say, first of all, that's just rare. And sometimes
Mhm.
we always think that the rare things is the things that we're going to deal with. The other issue is that you're not there to win an argument with people. You're there to talk. You're there to think together on life's important issues. And in doing that, you're loving them. You're caring for them, as you were just talking about, which I think that's the beauty of it. So that if you have to change your mindset, and I would actually say, I think you would agree, that this is a good mindset just to have in general. In general, this is a good way of just operating with people. I'm there to listen. I'm there to dialogue. I'm not trying to win an argument. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't have an argument. It doesn't even mean that you won't win an argument, maybe. But that's not why you're there. Like that's not the point of it. The point of it is to care for people, is to love for people, to love people. Now, here's the thing, though, that I think's the kind of the foundation of everything we're talking about. You will never have the kind of mindset that will do this with another person, that will have these kind of conversations, unless you are rock solid in your faith. You need to know what you believe, and until that point, um, then what happens is it's very difficult to listen, and it's very difficult to not get into an argument, because when you're not confident in your own faith, you will be uh, very defensive. But when you're confident, then you're not defensive. You know you can you can listen to people without worrying that maybe what I've been believing is a bunch of lies, sort of idea. So my point being that apologetics is often viewed as something that is evangelistic, and it is, but I would say that it's first and foremost evangelistic to you and not the other person, that it's about building your faith and answering your questions so that you can help others wrestle with the questions they have.
Yes, absolutely. Breath of fresh air. I often think about it too, like for me, having walked away from Christianity and like lived apart from God for quite a few years and then coming back at 21, I wouldn't have responded well if somebody would have tried to like debate me or anything like that. Like the vulnerability level of me up until I was 21, like growing up within the church, I was vulnerable though because I had experienced like trauma and stuff like that in my childhood. And so I was vulnerable around my faith. And then when I walked away from faith, I was vulnerable within it. And then when I came back, I was vulnerable because, in my view back then, it was the church and the Christians that caused me the most harm because I had this expectation that they should be there loving me in the midst of my trauma and my chaos and all the things. But I felt like they failed deeply on that part. So when I came back into Christianity, I call it my hibernation time. Like I just hunkered down with Jesus, worked through my trauma, worked through my church hurt, got to know who God was, read the Bible, got into that rhythm and that routine of doing it. And then I think it was like 2020 during the pandemic where God started to light that fire and be like, "Hey, now you need to like step up and like commit further into this relationship and share it with other people." And that all happened because I had a non-Christian friend post anti-Christian memes on Facebook and Instagram about how much Christianity is a joke and sucks. And I was like, that's not what I believe at all. And it wasn't until that point that I started to learn about apologetics.
Mm.
And then that's when I came and found you. Like, what is this? Teach me your ways.
By the way, I don't know, this may sound funny or weird, but how cool is that your friend feels comfortable and safe enough in the country he lives in and with the Christians he's surrounded with that he can post memes and poke fun at Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
I like that's just something to ponder in and of itself. I mean, if anything, that speaks to the kind of the ethos of Christianity is that you actually can poke fun and ask questions and not worry that you're going to receive a death threat.
Yeah.
That has historically been the case. Now, don't get me wrong. There of course have been moments where horrible things have been done in the name of Christianity. I'm not trying to say that there hasn't been, but by and large, it has actually been the uh, it has brought forward. You can go all the way back to the 200s with um, Tertullian and other early church leaders that argued and fought for religious freedom, that we should be able to have our beliefs and opinions and bring them to the marketplace of ideas and debate them and hash them out and do that in a safe environment. And so, to me, on the one hand, it might annoy you when friends, post those memes, but on the other hand, you're like, yeah, but this is the part of the human dialogue that has been going on for a long time as
Well,
we're
yeah.
seeking out truth. But are you going to get angry with it, right? And want to fight back, or are you going to get solid in your faith and engage?
Yeah. I think my experience has been anytime something like that has come up, since I came back to faith at 21, it's like been an opportunity where I've dug my roots deeper into Christianity, into God, and the truth of what the Bible speaks to. And so all of those like negative things that have happened where I could have just been like offended and gotten mad and angry and started yelling at people and flipping tables, I uh dug down deeper because I realized I need to know what I believe. I need to be able to articulate what I believe so that I have the ability to speak truth in front of these people that don't understand what it means to be in a relationship with Christ. And so I've personally, and like that's not even Melanie being so great and awesome and figuring this stuff out, and I just don't get mad now because I'm so awesome. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the sanctification of reading scripture and
Mm.
pursuing an authentic relationship with Christ on a daily basis. And I can't take credit for where my heart and my spirit are today because I've just made the decision to show up. And God
Yeah.
has done all the work in my life, in my spirit, in my mind to be able to reclaim me for his own and now use me, hopefully, prayerfully, as somebody that can go out and share to other people the truth of who he is.
Yeah. No, amen. I got to ask you a question though, because as a part of this, I mean, we laugh a lot, and QC, there's lots of laughter as well. We don't, because one thing that's kind of maybe it's a life motto is to not take myself too seriously. That I take Jesus very seriously. I take my faith very seriously, but at the same time, you got to be able to laugh. Life is too short not to have a good laugh at some of just the ridiculousness and our own ridiculousness. But like, have you ever been on Instagram or Facebook and just scrolling through and you see just these ridiculous church services that somebody has posted, and I often
Yeah.
see this kind of like meme that says my church isn't weird at all, I promise, and you see like these people just doing bonkers things. Have you ever seen some of these vids?
Oh, I have a follower on Instagram that's always like dishing those into my DMs. Yeah, I've
Now
seen
I
those.
don't know about you, but I find a lot of them quite amusing. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, that church is bonkers. But what's funny about it though to me is that people would think, oh, because I could go find some creepy church in the 80s doing some weird dance moves or something, that like all of a sudden that means that all church is like that, or that
Yeah.
Christianity is absolutely ridiculous. It's like, no, but those people, listen. Plus, hey, I lived through the 80s. Okay, we did a lot of weird things back in the 80s, and sometimes you just got to look back at those things and you just got to have a laugh. Uh, and again, not take yourself too seriously, but pursue Christ seriously. I don't know. Did that make any sense? Like, I just find that so much right now on social media. There's people will poke fun at church or religion. I mean, we've had that for a long time with The Simpsons and others. Uh,
Yeah.
that quite frankly, I quite often find funny.
Yeah. No, yeah. Definitely don't take yourself too
And I guess the
seriously.
Babylon Bee is really taking that to
Yeah.
heart, like
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because they often will mock Christians, not just
yeah,
society in general.
totally. But you can find literally anything and everything online now. Social media, like there's accounts for everything, which is wild to think. Like I only see what my algorithm shows me and I'm not going looking for anything weird, but um like it's just wild to think how many people, like anybody can make an account, anybody can post a video. It can be true, it can be false, it can be like their perception of what might be true. But it's like literally anybody can make the account and start pumping out the info. So it's just like an interesting time that we're living in.
Yeah, it's funny. The algorithms seem to. It's funny the stuff they they throw your way, because it's almost kind of like you're looking in a mirror at some level. That these AI algorithms have this uncanny way of knowing what you find interesting or funny. That it's a little disturbing at times.
It is. I love bears. I like if I go hiking in the forest and I see a bear, like I'm not ir- how do I say? I am a responsible person. I'm not chasing down the bear, but like I get excited. I'm like, yeah, bear. But the algorithm's been pumping out all of the bear encounter
So you
videos
get a
for
lot of
me.
bear encounter videos.
I don't normally doom scroll, but it's got me this season.
It's got you this season.
Yeah, it does.
Oh
And
man, that's funny. Bears.
yeah.
Uh,
I
you know
put
what? You're not even gonna hear what mine is. Mine is ridiculous. I don't know. There's this guy. Okay, I'll tell you. You're gonna, however, whatever you view of me, prepare for it to lower like
okay.
a solid degree. There's this guy in New York that goes into Central Park and just posts videos of himself making fart noises around people. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
No, I haven't.
No, okay, because that's what fills my feed, and I find it absolutely hilarious. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me, but
You're a boy.
it kills me. It kills me every time.
That's great. I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
do have two boys as well, so
Here, that's part of
maybe
it.
that's part of it.
Awesome. Okay, let's circle back. Let's talk about some of the questions that you find come up a lot in regard to questioning Christianity. When people are wrestling with questions, what are a few of the top questions that they wrestle with?
The number one top question is evil and suffering, period. It is. But you know what? Not only is that the case now, but when you look back historically at what Christians and non-Christians have written on and thought on, evil and suffering has just been numero uno, number one. Still has been, and as far as I'm concerned, always will be. Uh, I find that shouldn't surprise us then that the Bible is very much focused on that question.
Yeah.
What is good, what is evil, and what's God doing about it? And in fact, I was just at church this last Sunday, and a guy came up to me and asked me, Andy, what's a good book that you would recommend for evil and suffering? So I hear that I hear that one a lot, and that one, in fact, I would even double down on that and say that most questions that people ask, if you just keep digging, the root of it will come back to that question. It seems to be a foundational question to most of the things that we ask, because even the questions that we ask about God, I find there are, there are atheists that I'll encounter that genuinely have intellectual questions about God. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, when I talk with people about God, that at core, the question that they're really dealing with isn't whether or not they think God is real or whether or not God exists. The question that they're dealing with is whether or not God's good. And even just look at Dawkins, look at the stuff he writes on, look at what he gets most upset with regards to Christianity. It tends to be questions around evil and suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely encountered that.
So then other questions that we will get, and these tend to be seasonal, with not just within a year, but I'm talking within decades. So if you were to rewind, from the last decade, I'm telling you, the questions that I dealt with 10 years ago were way different questions than we're dealing with today. And so we just have to appreciate that people in culture are asking different questions at different times. So 10 years ago, we would ask questions like, is there any good arguments for God's existence and the like? So, kind of in the wake of the new atheists, you had some kind of basic questions about, um, you know, do all religions lead to God, sort of thing, or no religion leads to God, and there's no good arguments for God's existence, sort of idea. Intriguingly enough, right now, one of the major questions that we have and that we get asked aren't about atheism. Atheism is kind of it's actually quite rare these days that I meet atheists, like a staunch atheist. They tend to be an atheist plus something else. So they would kind of hold to atheistic ideas, but they would be like they would have something else mixed in with it, some other new age belief kind of mixed in with it, and they tend to ask questions about the Bible. So, is the Bible trustworthy? Is the God of the Old Testament good? A lot of questions actually more directed at Christianity itself. I would say right now. The other thing too is, of course, there's cultural questions. So right now we're dealing with the issues of racism have grown exponentially recently. I think that this is in part because of a lot of ideologies that have been recently embraced. So racism is a huge one. Another big one, of course, is gender, is LGBTQ issues on sexuality. Another big one, of course, would be transgender issues and issues of biology, which are fascinating cultural questions that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Lots of heavy, hot topics.
Hmm.
I did notice that we also, like for the course itself, we would have a lot of people that have identified as Christians for a long period of time show up. So my question for you in general, from your experience with pastoring and being in ministry and having Apologetics Canada, how often do you think you've encountered people that are Christians or have grown up to be like always been a Christian that are wrestling in their faith? How often do you encounter this? How prevalent do you think that it is within the church? And how do you think that we can better equipped and come alongside those people that are maybe not openly sharing their questions?
Yeah, that one's always so hard, right? Because people keep it, if they keep it to themselves, it can be very difficult to know just how much. But I think many, many people, from what I've seen in the church, harbor questions, and these questions, especially if they're ones that they're avoiding and they don't deal with them, that it stunts their growth, their faith. I've seen this so often. For example, a big question that I get regularly is questions about Christianity and science, and are they in opposition to each other? If they're not, like how do Christianity and science get along with each other? How do they work together? And so for some people, they'll come to church, and when they come to church, they kind of put on their Christian clothes, but then when they go to work, they put on their lab coat and their science clothes, and it's kind of like they can go in the clothes can go in the closet together, but they can't touch. They can't mesh. They're two separate identities, really. And that, I think, for a lot of people becomes a lot of doubts and questions that just go unanswered and they fester. And so this is one of the beauties of questioning Christianity, is to say, don't let your doubts fester. Like, actually deal with those doubts, get those questions out and begin talking and praying them through. And I don't want to pretend like I don't have my own, questions. There are definitely issues that I've thought about for years and some I'm still thinking through. And just recently there was a question that I had been thinking about for a long time that I feel like I've really got some closure on that question. I think that's part of the journey of being a Christian and following Jesus, is being as students, we think through, students of Jesus, if you will, we think through what we believe about the world, what we believe to be true about the world. And that's a process as we're working through that, and we get various challenges along the way. The thing that becomes difficult is, with most people in the church having questions, how do you successfully create a space that is a non-judgmental place that people can come to ask their questions without them feeling like their salvation's being called into question, or their identities being called into question, that it is just genuinely safe, it is okay to ask your questions and to think through those big topics together. That's the trick.
Yeah, even from my own experience, but also my experience walking with people within Christianity with their own faith journeys. Like, I've had a few different friends that have grown up in Christianity, kind of wrestled with their questions, and then became cynical, and then started to like stack the deck against Christianity. And then eventually they've walked out of Christianity, and now they're completely polar opposite in the world, doing whatever it is that Christianity says you're not supposed to do. And I've seen that a lot. And a lot of that is why I've wanted to start my own ministry and start this podcast, to help speak to those people that are wrestling in this season of isolation within their faith journey, and hopefully pull them back from the fire. There's a quote by C.T. Studd that says, "Some wish to live within the sound of church and chapel bell. I wish to run a rescue shop within a yard of hell."
Hmm,
And it's like, I feel like that's my ministry. I just want to like
I like
be
that.
out there pulling people back from the flames, and like just sending them in the direction of Jesus, but not in a way that it's like, "Yay, Melanie, you won another one. Good job." But like literally, like I go to a
Not today,
counselor.
Satan.
Not today, Satan. Not on my watch. No, but I have a counselor, and I was like sharing this with her, and she's like, "Oh, you're like the spiritual triage girl. Like, you go out and like triage people and pull them back or whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, I like that." So it's just like,
I hear
I
what you're saying,
know.
though, because you know what the good that's found in Jesus, and you know the bad that's found outside of him. And so
Yeah.
I think that's, for many of us, is the impetus. You're like, it's not because I'm trying to put another notch on my belt.
Yeah.
I want to see that person set free.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I know a lot of people are struggling with their understanding of who God is. And it grieves my heart to know, like, for the experience that I now have in pursuing right relationship with God and like spending time in the Word on a daily basis. And like everything that I've come to know and understand now since giving my life back over to Christ, it is like the most beautiful experience I have ever had to pursue Christ.
Mm.
I have never felt more fulfilled, more joyful, more peaceful at all. And like I've gone through trials and tribulations within this walk. I've lost loved ones. I lost my brother to addiction. I've lost my grandparents. You know, I've experienced those relational losses. I've also wrestled with the loss of friendships or just like seasons of changing. Like I pursued a career for so many years, and then I had to grieve the loss of pursuing that career to be home with my kids. And that is a gift. Like I'm so grateful for the honor and the privilege to be at home with my kids. But when I was in that mindset of career for so long, like I had to grieve that loss and say, okay, Lord, not my will, but your will be done.
Mm.
And my walk hasn't always been perfect. I have seen hardship within my Christian faith. And I think a lot of times some people can struggle with that, thinking, oh, well, Christians don't experience any hardship. They're just perfect people, or they think they're perfect people. But on the other hand, you also have people that are like, oh, like you know nothing because you're a Christian. Or even Christians that think that if they are facing hardship, then they must be doing something wrong because they're facing hardship. It's like, no, life comes with baggage. The difference is that we get to bring it to the foot of the cross and be in the presence of our God in the process of going through those storms.
Hmm.
I don't even know where I went right there, but I went somewhere.
Just preaching a sermon there, girl. I love
Woo!
it.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
Amen. And, and ultimately with QC, this is an avenue to do that. So there are many avenues in churches to reach people in where they're at in various stages of their life. And I think QC is just a unique opportunity that's often missing, that I'm thankful to be able to provide. You know, we've often heard that quote. I think it's from Gandhi: "Be the change in the world that you want to
Yeah.
see." And I don't know if he's the one who said it or not, but it's a good phrase, and it is something that I've tried to live my life by. That if I wish, like I said at the beginning, that something like this had existed for me. I know it's not for everyone, but if I can at least make the opportunity for those that need it, I'm happy to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's such a valuable resource. And yeah, it offers a lot for people that are struggling in their faith, and especially in this day and age when there are so many questions. And you know, it's not like I feel like when I was a kid growing up, it was like, oh, you're a Christian. Oh, good. That's cool. Good job.
Yeah.
Like it was like a positive thing. But now it's like, oh, you're a Christian type of thing. Like I kind of get that sense. I don't,
Hmm.
again, I'm just one person in this world. But yeah, yeah.
No, I definitely hear you. Another interesting aspect of it that I think's been cool, along those lines of discipleship, is those like yourself and others that participate in this ministry with us. There's a team of us, and we actually really like working together. And it's been very interesting to be able to grow together in asking and answering these questions. And we've started reading books together and discussing more intentionally on how we can grow, kind of like as a ministry team doing this work, which has been neat.
Yeah, it has been. It's like building a community.
Yeah. And I would just encourage, if there's any pastors listening to this, it's a great ministry to do at church. We've seen so many people come to faith. We've seen so many people get baptized. And I mean, just last Sunday, I was at church, and a girl who came to QC was there, and I had been seeing her for a while now, and she was there with her husband, and she was so excited to tell me about how her and her husband were in church and what God's doing in her life. And man, like it's just been, even if there's just one of those stories, but we got lots of those stories,
Yeah,
but
we
even if
do.
there's just one, would be encouraging. So I would just encourage anybody who's thinking about doing something like this, or anybody who wants to get involved in something like this. It's a great ministry to do and to be a part of, and just would encourage others to think about doing this. This is something that we are ultimately trying to inspire other churches to do. We've been doing this for what, we're coming up on 4 years or so,
Yeah.
and we've learned a lot along the way, and we're trying to kind of consolidate that into a bit of a package to help other churches to navigate how they could operate something similar in their own community.
Absolutely. So if people are interested in learning more about this course, Questioning Christianity or Apologetics Canada, where can they go?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you can always just come out to a QC if you want to see what it's like. It'll be starting up again here in the fall. We do it twice a year, once in the fall, once in the winter. So you could come check that out. There's not a lot of information at the moment about it. However, as you know, with our Apologetics Canada conference, it's coming up in March. We are going to be speaking on that as a breakout session. So that would be a good place to get even more info. But you could go to apologeticscanada.com and you could get plenty of information about Apologetics Canada. And you could always reach out to me with regards to any questions about QC.
Wonderful. Okay, well, and I'll have all those links in the show notes. So is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners before we close out for the day?
Nope. Other than Melanie is incredible and
Oh,
love having you a part of the team. And thanks for having me on the podcast. It was awesome to be with you today.
awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming out.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening in this week to our conversation. If you would like to connect with Apologetics Canada and Andy, then I will have their website linked below, and then you can reach out directly to them that way. You can also check out my website, which I will also have in the show notes. If you would like to learn more about the ministry that we have here at Rekindled Faith, what we've been doing in the community, and our plans for the future, then be sure to go over there. I am also writing a Christian nonfiction book with the intention of empowering the burnt out Christian to rekindle their faith. So if you want to stay up to date with what's happening with that, then I suggest that you subscribe to the monthly newsletter, which is on the first page of my wonderful website. If any of you feel led to donate to this ministry, Rekindled Faith, then you can also check out that information on the website of how to do that. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to meeting with you all again next week. Bye for now.